So let's start with the driving. It's such an important part and aspect of the game and can really take a lot of pressure off the other parts. So as we said, we mentioned a reference to performance data beforehand in terms of the statistics. So what do we really need to do on average to shoot in the 70s from a driving perspective? So firstly, we need to drive the ball in around 240 yards. So that's what we're going to start with in terms of this next video. But what we also need to do is make sure that we put that ball in play. Now, for a lot of that, we're going to say, okay, well, I need to hit roughly 43 or 45% of fairways. That's a good stat to start with. I'm okay with you missing fairways as long as we're not taking penalty shots, right? So really keep it in play. The rough is okay, right? So a little kind of saying that I go with for a lot of players. So as long as we keep it in play off the tee, that's all right to go into the rough and have those little bit more challenging shots. Now, we know when we're looking at the PGA Tour stats, we're looking at the money list, all those references would really say the players that hit it the furthest make the most money. Now, that means they're shooting the best scores. So it's very, very important when we look at this. The further we do hit it, it gives us more of an opportunity to hit some shorter irons into the green. If we do have a little bit more dispersion with that, that's okay, as long as it's not costing us penalty shots, which is the most important thing. So as we go into the driving, we're going to talk about the distance first, so some strategies you can use to create a little bit more distance, and then we're going to talk about the dispersion, narrowing down those rights and lefts that you might have at the moment. So let's get started. Let's get into the distance, hopefully find you a few extra yards to get to that 240, or if you're already there, even get you a little bit more. So let's talk about strategies for hitting the driver further. What we're going to start with, it's going to sound relatively simple. We're going to start with the notion of swinging the club faster. And I know that sounds very, very simplistic, but it is important. So what I see with a lot of players is they nearly have this handbrake in their system on how fast they swing this golf club. And what I mean and what I'm referring to is not so much in downswing, really applies to backswing. So I see those players nearly kind of that low and slow kind of guideline, but moving very, very slowly on the way back. And when we move very, very slowly on the way back, it's going to be harder or more challenging to create that speed on the way down. Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it more challenging? I believe so. So one of the first things I start with players that are hitting it or want to hit it a little further, hitting it a little bit shorter, I ask them, okay, well, how fast can we actually swing it in backswing? And they kind of look obviously quizzically at me and they go, well, that sounds simple. I'm like, yeah, but let's try it. So if we were hitting some shots, what I'd like you to kind of get a look at for your own swing is how fast do you actually take this golf club back? So what you might see as you go back is a kind of a little bit of ponderous kind of action, but can we rev up the engine a little bit? So can we feel as we go in backswing that we actually get everything moving a little bit quicker? Now, the one really, really important aspect of this is when we want to get this club moving faster, earlier, we want it in the first section of the golf swing. So I want to really feel early on that I'm pulling this club back as fast as I can. But what's also important is I don't want to do that alone with just my hands. So I'm going to feel it's everything moving together. So as I get set up to this, to get this club to move faster, I'm going to feel like everything's moving faster. So you can see that kind of nearly describe it as a jerky motion. But what I'm trying to do is nearly get my body primed to get faster. So I'm trying to break the handbrake that's in my head of the speed I should go at all the time. So if you're looking at that, and let's just hit one here and we'll just try it. So we're going to get set up here and just trying to very, very simplistically, we're just going to go, okay, can we go a little bit faster here as we go back? Right, so just kind of going back as fast as I possibly can. And that alone might create a little bit more speed. So a very simplistic way to do it. Now, what are some nice drills around that thought or that concept? Well, can we just do what we just did? Just feeling like we go back faster. Another little nice drill to do that, however, is if I set this back up again, and I just set that golf ball down, I'm gonna get another tee back here, just put it a little bit inside the club head path there as I travel back. And my objective now as I go back is to knock that tee out of the way as quickly as I can. So as I would go back on this one, trying to really, really knock that tee out of the way can be another way to encourage that club to go back faster. So our first strategy for getting more distance is get the club swinging faster earlier, not later. We want it to be in that first section of the backswing and we want it all to be together. Okay, so they're the guidelines. We want to make sure it's in the first section of the backswing and it's everything moving together, really going back as fast as we can, really changing or turning off that handbrake we have in our system. Really nice, simple strategy to get a little bit more distance. So strategy number 2 is going to talk about the hand path length. So what I mean by that is how far the hands travel in your backswing and in, therefore, your downswing. And what we know is from very, very smart people like Sasha McKenzie and other PhDs is if I apply a certain amount of energy or force over a longer period of time, there's a good chance that I'm going to end up with more force, more speed at the golf ball. Now there is a break point where if I travel too far, I can lose the efficiency. But in terms of just looking at it from a very, very simplistic kind of basic kind of thought or concept, if my hands travel a little further back, I have the potential to create more speed. So this would really apply to those players that perhaps if you looked at your golf swing, you would maybe see your hands travel about 3/4 into that backswing. Now, how do we get those hands to travel a little bit further? So if that is my original swing where I just swing to around here and I feel like I've more or less, really coiled up as much as I potentially can, how do I get those hands to travel a little further? I definitely don't want to feel that my arms are bending. That wouldn't be the best way to do it. That would go back to maybe being a little bit less efficient in actuality. So what I want to feel is I want to allow my body to turn a little bit more to allow those hands to travel further. How might I do that? Well, looking at how the left foot and the left heel work might be the key to that move. So if I went back into that position, I said, okay, well, that's roughly where I get into my swing right now. But if I let that left heel up, okay, well, now I can get a little bit extra. Now again, we're just looking at these as potential options. Doesn't mean that this works for everybody, but we know the basis is proper, that if I allow my hands to travel a little bit further before break point, I'm actually going to potentially get more speed. So if I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, this is my normal swing here, but can I allow that left heel to come off the ground, allow a little bit more length? So if I was kind of hitting a shot there, allow that left heel and just allow a little bit more length in terms of how far those hands travel back. So our option 2 for creating more speed, get to that 240-yard marker, or even if we want to go that little bit further, we'll be adding in a little bit more hand path travel length. How do we do that? We could simply just do it, just allow those hands to travel further back. What we might do is look at the body to allow that to happen. And then just as a little word of caution, what we don't want to get into those positions where we're actually sacrificing the functionality of the swing. So for example, okay, well, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go here. Well, that really wouldn't be very functionally or efficient in terms of what we're doing. So there is a break-even point with it, but a good strategy. Allow those hands to go a little bit further. That potentially can create more speed in the driver, get us up to that yardage that we need to break that magical number. So for our last strategy to hopefully add some more distance to your driver, we're going to talk a little bit technical things at impact. And what we're going to discuss is the attack angle of the driver. So that's basically describing the angle of descent of that driver head into the golf ball. Is it coming down into the golf ball, or is it moving up through the golf ball at impact? Now we know many drivers who struggle a little bit of distance have a tendency for that driver head to be actually coming down through impact, maybe like 2, 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees even, so very much hitting down on the back of the golf ball. Now if we have a lot of club head speed, that's not a bad thing, we can kind of get away with it. But if we don't have a ton of club head speed, that can really detract from our potential distance. So what we prefer to kind of explore would be allowing that driver head to actually be either a level, so more or less a 0 angle of attack, or even a little bit up. Because if we get that driver attacking a little bit more up through impact, it creates a little bit more dynamic loft and a higher launch. So the ball itself actually, launches a little higher, creates a little bit more height, therefore potentially a little bit more distance. So I know if I get this driver and I hit 5 degrees down on it, that would take maybe that driver loft that I have about 10 degrees and really de-loft it, okay? So really maybe potentially hit down, maybe takes loft off. Not always the case, but potentially could. So that really wouldn't create enough height. So a way to do this might be, okay, if I have that maybe not massive swing speed, I can actually just change the dynamics of impact to help me hit it further. So we have this alignment stick in the ground, and that is just a little bit of encouragement in terms of players playing around with this. So the idea really being, as I set up, can I match that alignment stick as I go through impact? So feeling like that club is moving up that alignment stick, gradually moving up through impact, and that would create that launch that I really want. So as I kind of get set up, I'm just taking a nice easy swing just so you can see this clearly, but as I go through, feeling like I go more up with that driver head, and that would create potentially a higher launch in terms of what I'm doing. So a nice way to look at it in terms of not doing the technical things, not changing the golf swing really, more or less just changing what happens at impact by feeling that that driver head is traveling a little bit more up through impact if we feel that we were a little bit too much down beforehand. A nice way for potentially increasing your driver distance.